I woke up to the sound of hammering on a Saturday morning, which was already enough to ruin my weekend. But when I looked out my bedroom window and saw three people constructing something on the edge of my property in Boulder, Colorado, my blood started to boil immediately. Let me back up a second. My name is Marcus Chen, and I bought this house about 2 years ago in the Meadowbrook Hills subdivision. It is a nice neighborhood with tree-lined streets and houses built in the early 2000s. The property came with just under half an acre of land, which was one of the main selling points for me. I am a software engineer who works from home, and I value my privacy and my space. The HOA seemed reasonable enough when I moved in. The fees were not terrible, and the rules seemed standard. No boats in driveways, keep your lawn maintained, nothing too crazy. That was before I met Patricia Mansfield. Patricia became the HOA president about 8 months ago, and she took to the position like a dictator seizing power in a small country. She was in her mid-50s, had that Karen haircut you see in memes, the short blonde bob with the angled front pieces, and she drove a white Lexus SUV. She wore yoga pants and oversized sunglasses like they were a uniform, and she had made it her personal mission to enforce every single HOA rule with the fury of 1,000 suns. But this morning was different. This was not about enforcement. This was about invasion. I threw on some jeans and a shirt and practically ran outside. The hammering got louder as I approached, and I could see that they were building some kind of wooden structure. There were 2 men I did not recognize, both wearing work gloves and tool belts, and standing nearby with a clipboard was Patricia herself, directing them like a general commanding troops. "What the hell is going on here?" I called out as I got closer. Patricia turned to me with that smile she always wore, the one that never reached her eyes. "Oh, Marcus, good morning. We are just installing the neighborhood compost bin. It is part of our new green initiative. On my property," I gestured to the ground beneath their feet, "this is my land." She glanced down at her clipboard, completely unbothered. "Actually, according to our survey, this is common area property. It is just inside the community boundary." "That is absolutely not true," I said, my voice rising. "I had a survey done when I bought this place. This is definitely my property. You are about 15 feet inside my property line." One of the workers stopped hammering and looked between us, clearly uncomfortable. Patricia just kept smiling. "I have the official HOA documents right here." This land was designated as common area in the original development plans. "Then your documents are wrong," I said. "I am telling you right now to stop construction and get off my property." Patricia's smile finally faded. "Marcus, I understand you are upset, but we have already invested money into this project. The compost bin will serve the entire neighborhood. It is for the greater good." "I do not care if it is for world peace," I shot back. "You are building on my land without my permission." "That is called trespassing, and if you do not stop right now, I am calling the police." She sighed dramatically, like I was an unreasonable child throwing a tantrum. "There is no need for threats. If you really feel that strongly about it, you can bring it up at the next HOA meeting. But for now, we need to finish this installation. We have the workers scheduled, and we have already purchased all the materials." I could not believe what I was hearing. "You think I am going to wait for a meeting while you build something on my property? Absolutely not. Stop now, or I am calling the cops." Patricia exchanged a look with the 2 workers, then turned back to me. "Fine, we will pause for now, but this is not over, Marcus. The HOA has rights, and we will be exercising them." "You have the right to stay off my property," I said. "And you can take your compost bin idea and stick it somewhere appropriate, like on HOA land." She gathered up her clipboard and gestured to the workers, who started packing up their tools. As they walked away, Patricia called back over her shoulder, "You will be hearing from our attorney." "Looking forward to it," I muttered. After they left, I stood there staring at the partially constructed wooden frame. They had already dug post holes and installed 4 corner posts with concrete. The whole thing was maybe 6 feet by 6 feet, clearly meant to be a large communal compost bin. And it was absolutely, definitely, 100% on my property. I went inside and immediately called my real estate attorney, David Rodriguez, who had handled my home purchase. Thankfully, he answered even though it was a Saturday. "Marcus, what is going on?" He asked after I explained the situation. "So they just started building without asking you or notifying you in any way," he said. "Exactly." And when I confronted them, the HOA president claimed it was common area land. "But David, I know it is not. I have the survey from when I bought the place." "Okay, first thing, do not touch anything they built. Leave it exactly as it is. I want to come by Monday morning and take photos, and we need to get a new survey done just to have recent documentation. This is pretty clear-cut trespassing and possibly property damage, depending on what they dug up." "What do I do if they come back?" I asked. "Call the police immediately." "You have told them to stop and to leave your property. If they come back, that is criminal trespassing. Do not engage with them directly anymore. Let law enforcement handle it." I felt a little better having a plan. David said he would draft a cease and desist letter to send to the HOA and Patricia personally, and he would start gathering all the documentation we needed. The rest of Saturday was quiet, but Sunday morning brought a new surprise. I walked outside to get my newspaper, and there was an official-looking letter taped to my front door. It was from the Meadowbrook Hills HOA, and it was a violation notice. I ripped it open right there on my porch. The letter stated that I was in violation of HOA Bylaws Section 4.7, which apparently prohibited interfering with approved community improvement projects. It demanded that I allow the compost bin construction to continue and threatened daily fines of $100 if I did not comply within 48 hours. I actually laughed out loud. The audacity was incredible. They trespassed on my property, I caught them in the act, and now they were threatening to fine me. This was insane. I took photos of the letter and texted them to David immediately with a message saying, "You need to see this." He called me back within 5 minutes. "This is harassment, Marcus. They know they do not have a leg to stand on and they are trying to bully you into backing down. Do not pay anything. Do not respond to this letter. I am going to include this in our documentation, and honestly, this might be evidence of intentional misconduct." Monday morning, David came by at 8 in the morning with a surveyor. We spent an hour walking the property lines while the surveyor took measurements and used his GPS equipment. When he was finished, he showed us the results on his laptop right there in my driveway. "This is definitely your property," he said, pointing to the screen. "The structure they started building is about 12 feet inside your property line. There is no question about it." David nodded, looking satisfied. "Perfect. I will have the official report by end of day." "Marcus, I am going to need you to sign some documents so I can send certified letters to the HOA board and to Patricia Mansfield personally, demanding they remove the structure and cease all activities on your land." "Do it," I said. "I am also going to recommend we send a copy to the Boulder Police Department and possibly file a report for trespassing and property damage. They dug holes and poured concrete on your land. That is damage." Over the next few days, things escalated quickly. David sent all the letters on Monday afternoon. By Wednesday, I received a call from a lawyer named Jennifer Hawthorne, who identified herself as counsel for the Meadowbrook Hills HOA. "Mr. Chen, I am calling regarding the property dispute over the compost bin location," she said in a professional but cold voice. "It is not a dispute," I replied. "They built on my property without permission. The survey proves it. They need to remove it." The HOA has documentation showing that parcel as common area, she insisted. We are prepared to defend our position. Then you are prepared to lose, I said. I have 2 surveys, including one from last week, both showing it is my land. If the HOA has different documentation, then their documentation is wrong. This is not complicated. Mr. Chen, I am trying to find a reasonable solution here. Would you be willing to grant an easement to allow the compost bin to remain? The HOA would be willing to forego any fines related to this matter. Forego fines that they have no right to impose in the first place. How generous, I said sarcastically. No, I am not granting an easement. I want that structure removed from my property immediately. The HOA has already invested over $3,000 in this project, she said, and I could hear the frustration creeping into her voice. That is not my problem. They should have verified the property lines before they started building. You have until Friday to remove everything, or I will pursue legal action for trespassing and property damage. We will see you in court, Mr. Chen, she said and hung up. David was pleased when I told him about the call. They are panicking, he said. They know they screwed up. The fact that their lawyer offered an easement proves they know they are on your land. Keep documenting everything. Friday came and went. Nothing was removed. On Saturday morning, exactly 1 week after they started building, I woke up to find that not only had they not removed anything, they had actually completed the compost bin. I could not believe my eyes. The wooden structure was now finished with walls, a roof, and a front gate. There were even 2 large plastic bins inside filled with what looked like grass clippings and food scraps. And there was a cheerful sign posted on the front that read, Meadowbrook Hills Community Compost help keep our neighborhood green. They had actually finished building it, on my property. After being told multiple times to remove it, I called David immediately and I called the Boulder Police non-emergency line. An officer arrived about an hour later, a young guy named Officer Patterson, and I explained the entire situation while showing him the survey documents. So this structure is definitely on your property? He asked, looking at the paperwork. 100%, I have proof right here. And you have asked them multiple times to remove it? Yes. I have certified letters, lawyer communications, everything. He nodded slowly. Okay, so this is technically a civil property dispute, which means we usually do not get involved unless there is an ongoing trespass or criminal activity. Since they are not here right now actively trespassing, you would need to pursue this through the courts. But they built this after I told them not to, I protested. How is that not criminal? I understand your frustration, Mr. Chen, and I am not saying you are wrong. I am just saying that property line disputes typically get resolved in civil court. However, I can file a report documenting your complaint, and if they come back onto your property after you have explicitly told them not to, then we can pursue criminal trespassing charges. It was not the answer I wanted, but at least there would be a police report on file. After Officer Patterson left, I stood in my yard staring at this ridiculous compost bin that had no business being there. And that is when the idea hit me. They wanted a compost bin. Fine. They could have all the compost they wanted, just not on my property. I went to my garage and grabbed a shovel and a large tarp. Then I went to the compost bin and opened the gate. The 2 bins inside were actually pretty full. There were grass clippings, leaves, vegetable scraps, coffee grounds, and other organic waste that was already starting to smell pretty ripe in the Colorado sun. I laid out the tarp on the ground and started scooping. It took me about an hour to empty both bins completely. The compost was heavy and disgusting, and the smell was absolutely terrible, but I was motivated by pure spite at this point. Once I had everything loaded onto the tarp, I carefully dragged it to my truck and used the shovel to load it all into the bed. I probably had a good 200 pounds of rotting organic matter, and my truck smelled like death. Then I drove 3 blocks over to Patricia Mansfield's house. I knew where she lived because she had hosted an HOA meeting there a few months back. It was a large 2-story house with a perfect lawn and elaborate landscaping. Her white Lexus was parked in the driveway, so I knew she was home. I backed my truck up to the curb in front of her house, got out, and lowered the tailgate. Then I grabbed my shovel and started throwing compost onto her front lawn. Shovel after shovel of disgusting, rotting, smelly organic waste landed on her pristine grass. I spread it around nice and even, making sure to get good coverage across the whole front yard. I was about halfway through when Patricia came storming out of her house. "What do you think you are doing?" she shrieked, running down her driveway. "Delivering your compost," I said calmly, tossing another shovel full onto her lawn. "You seemed so passionate about this green initiative. I figured you would want all this great organic material for your own yard. You cannot do this. This is my property." Her face was turning red and her hands were shaking. "Funny how that works, is it not?" I said, not stopping. "Property rights matter when it is your land, but not when it is mine." "I am calling the police," she screamed. "Go ahead," I said. "I am sure they will be very interested to hear about how you built an illegal structure on my property." She was already dialing on her phone, screaming into it about vandalism and property damage. I finished emptying the last of the compost, threw my shovel back in the truck, closed the tailgate, and got in the driver's seat. As I pulled away, I could see Patricia standing in her driveway, surrounded by the smell of rotting garbage, with her phone still pressed to her ear. Several neighbors had come outside to see what the commotion was about. It was pretty satisfying, I have to admit. I drove home expecting the police to show up at any moment, but I was not worried. I had not done anything illegal. I had not damaged her property. I had simply delivered organic material to her lawn. Messy? Yes, rude, absolutely, illegal. I did not think so. Sure enough, about 40 minutes later, Officer Patterson showed up at my door again, this time with an older officer named Sergeant Matthews. "Mr. Chen," Patterson said with a slight smile, "we received a call about an incident at Patricia Mansfield's residence." "I returned the compost that was illegally placed in the bin on my property," I said. Since she seemed so enthusiastic about composting, I thought she might want it for her own use. Sergeant Matthews rubbed his face like he was trying not to laugh. "So you dumped garbage on her lawn." "Compost," I corrected. "Organic material from the illegal compost bin that the HOA constructed on my property without permission. I simply removed it from my land and delivered it to the HOA president who authorized its collection." "That is not how this works, Mr. Chen," Matthews said, though his tone was not harsh. "You cannot just dump stuff on someone's lawn, even if you are in a property dispute. So when she builds on my property, you say it is a civil matter and you cannot help. But when I put compost on her lawn, suddenly the police can take action," I asked. Patterson and Matthews exchanged a look. "He has a point," Patterson said quietly. Matthews sighed. "Look, Mr. Chen, I understand you are frustrated. And between you and me, I think the HOA is in the wrong here based on what Officer Patterson's report says. But you cannot take the law into your own hands. If you keep doing things like this, you could face charges for harassment or property damage." "Did I damage her property?" I asked. "It is just organic material on grass. If anything, it is free fertilizer. It is also rotting garbage that smells terrible and attracts pests," Matthews countered. "Miss Mansfield wants to press charges. For what specifically?" I asked. "What law did I break?" Matthews pulled out a notepad and flipped through it. "She is claiming littering, trespassing, and harassment. I never stepped foot on her property. I delivered the material from the curb, which is public space. And it is not littering because it is organic compost from a composting program she approved. As for harassment, I did not threaten her or even speak to her beyond explaining what I was doing. Sergeant Matthews looked at me for a long moment. "You are a real pain in the ass, you know that." "So I have been told," I replied. "Here is what is going to happen," he said. "You are going to clean up the compost from Miss Mansfield's lawn. And she is going to remove the structure from your property. And both of you are going to stop this nonsense before someone actually breaks a law that I have to enforce. Understood?" "I will clean her lawn when she removes the structure from my property," I said. "Not before." Matthews shook his head. "I am trying to help you here." "I appreciate that, Sergeant, but I am not the one who started this. I am just defending my property rights. The moment that structure is gone from my land, I will clean her lawn. I will even do it wearing a smile, but not 1 second before." After the officers left, I called David to update him on everything that had happened. He was silent for a moment after I finished the story. "Marcus, I am your attorney, so I have to tell you that dumping compost on someone's lawn was not the smartest move legally speaking. But," I prompted, "but it is also hilarious and it might actually get us somewhere. The HOA now knows you are serious and that you are willing to fight back. That gives us leverage." "So what happens next?" I asked. "I am filing a civil lawsuit tomorrow morning. We are suing the HOA and Patricia Mansfield personally for trespassing, property damage, harassment, and legal fees. I am asking for removal of the structure, compensation for your damages, and an injunction preventing them from coming onto your property. The lawsuit will get their attention." The lawsuit was filed on Tuesday. By Thursday, I received a very angry email from the HOA's attorney, Jennifer Hawthorne, stating that the HOA was countersuing me for the cost of the compost bin construction, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. "They are grasping at straws," David told me when I forwarded him the email. "None of those claims will hold up. You cannot defame someone by telling the truth about what they did, and emptying their compost bin does not meet the legal standard for intentional infliction of emotional distress. They are just trying to scare you." The following week, I received a notice that there would be an emergency HOA meeting to discuss the ongoing situation with a problematic homeowner. I decided to attend, bringing David with me. The meeting was held at the community clubhouse on a Wednesday evening. When David and I walked in, there were probably 30 homeowners already seated in folding chairs. Patricia sat at a table in the front with 3 other board members: Bill Henderson, the vice president, Mary Chen, no relation to me, the secretary, and Robert Martinez, the treasurer. Patricia's eyes narrowed when she saw me enter. "This meeting is for homeowners only," she announced. "He is a homeowner," someone called out. "He lives on Spruce Court." "His attorney is not a homeowner," Patricia shot back. "HOA meetings are required by your bylaws to be open to homeowners and their representatives," David said calmly, holding up a copy of the bylaws. "Section 2.3. I can read it aloud if you would like." Patricia's jaw clenched, but she gestured to some empty chairs. "Fine. Sit down." Once everyone was settled, Patricia called the meeting to order and immediately launched into her version of events. According to her, I was a difficult and unreasonable homeowner who was preventing the HOA from implementing important community improvements. She claimed the compost bin was properly placed on common area land, and that I had harassed her and vandalized her property. "This kind of behavior cannot be tolerated in our community," she said, looking around the room. "Which is why the board is proposing a special assessment of $500 per household to cover our legal costs in dealing with this matter." There was immediate grumbling from the audience. A man in the back raised his hand. "Wait, you want us to pay for your legal bills because of something you did? This is a community issue," Patricia insisted. "We are defending the HOA's rights." "Or you could just admit you built on his property by mistake and move the compost bin," a woman in the front row suggested. "The survey clearly shows it is common area," Patricia said, but she did not sound as confident anymore. David stood up. "May I address the homeowners?" Patricia looked like she wanted to say no, but Bill Henderson, the vice president, nodded. "Let him speak." David pulled out copies of both surveys and handed them around. "As you can see from these official surveys, one conducted when Mr. Chen purchased his home and one conducted 2 weeks ago. The compost bin is built approximately 12 feet inside his private property. The HOA has provided no evidence to support their claim that this is common area. They trespassed, they built without permission, and when confronted, they threatened Mr. Chen with fines instead of admitting their mistake. "Can we see the HOA's survey?" someone asked Patricia. She shifted uncomfortably. "Our documentation is from the original development plans." "So you do not have an actual survey showing it is common area?" the same person pressed. "The development plans are sufficient," Patricia insisted, but people were already shaking their heads. Mary Chen, the secretary, spoke up for the first time. "Patricia, I have been looking at the original development plans, and honestly they are not detailed enough to establish exact property lines. If he has 2 surveys saying it is his land, I think we need to take that seriously." "Thank you, Mary," Patricia said coldly. "But I am the president, and I am making the decision to move forward with our legal defense." "Actually," Robert Martinez, the treasurer, interjected, "any expenditure over $5,000 requires a full board vote, and we have already exceeded that with attorney fees. I have not approved any additional spending for this." Patricia's face was getting red again. "This is a crucial issue for the HOA." "It is a crucial issue that you created," Bill Henderson said quietly. "And I think we need to seriously consider whether we are on the right side of this." The meeting devolved into arguing, with homeowners taking sides. Some supported Patricia, saying the HOA had authority to make decisions for the community good. Others thought the whole thing was ridiculous and that the compost bin should just be moved. Finally, an older man in the back stood up. "I am Doug Peterson. I have lived in this neighborhood for 15 years. And I am formally requesting a vote of no confidence in Patricia Mansfield as HOA president." There was a moment of shocked silence, then several people started nodding and voicing their agreement. Patricia stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "You cannot do that. I was elected." "And we can unelect you," Doug said. "That is how this works. I am making a formal motion for a vote of no confidence." "I second the motion," Mary Chen said immediately. The vote happened right there. Out of 32 homeowners present, 24 voted in favor of removing Patricia as president. Her face went from red to white as the votes were counted. "This is not over," she said, grabbing her papers and storming out of the clubhouse. After she left, the mood in the room changed completely. Bill Henderson, now the acting president, turned to me and David. "Mr. Chen, I apologize for all of this. The compost bin was clearly Patricia's project and she did not do her due diligence. If we arrange to have it removed from your property this week, would you be willing to drop the lawsuit?" David and I stepped outside to confer privately. "What do you think?" I asked him. "I think you won," he said. "They are offering to give you exactly what you wanted. We could push for damages, but honestly, pursuing a lawsuit against an HOA is expensive and time-consuming. If they remove the structure and agree to pay your attorney fees so far, I would recommend taking the deal." We went back inside, and I told Bill I would agree to drop the lawsuit if they removed the structure within 1 week, paid my attorney fees to date, and issued a formal apology acknowledging that the construction was done in error on my private property. "And I will clean Patricia's lawn once the structure is removed," I added. Bill smiled for the first time all night. Deal. 3 days later, the same 2 workers who had built the compost bin showed up with a truck and power tools. I watched from my porch as they dismantled the entire structure, pulled the posts out of the ground, and hauled everything away. They even filled in the holes and reseeded the area with grass. When they were finished, one of them came up to my porch. "Sorry about all this, man. We just did what we were told. We did not know there was a property dispute." "Not your fault," I said. "You guys did good work. It is just in the wrong spot." That afternoon, I loaded up my truck with trash bags, a rake, and a shovel, and I drove over to Patricia's house. Her lawn still had scattered bits of compost that had dried and crushed into the grass over the past week. It looked terrible and smelled worse. I spent 2 hours cleaning every bit of organic material from her lawn, bagging it all up, and even raking the grass to help it recover. Her Lexus was in the driveway the whole time, but she never came outside. I could see her watching from a window, though. When I was finished, I left the bags neatly stacked by her curb for trash pickup and drove home. The formal apology from the HOA arrived by mail the following week. It was a single page signed by Bill Henderson as acting president, stating that the compost bin had been constructed in error on my private property, that the HOA took full responsibility, and that they apologized for any inconvenience. They also sent a check for $3,200, which covered David's attorney fees. I thought that was the end of it, but I was wrong. About 2 weeks later, I got a call from Officer Patterson. "Mr. Chen, I wanted to give you a heads up about something. We received a complaint from Patricia Mansfield claiming you have been stalking and harassing her." "What? That is insane." "I cleaned her lawn and I have not gone near her since." "I know," Patterson said. "We checked into it and she has no evidence of any harassment. But she is filing complaints and I wanted you to be aware. Just make sure you really do not have any contact with her. Do not drive by her house. Do not engage if you see her in public, nothing. Let her make a fool of herself." "Understood," I said. "Thanks for the warning." But Patricia was not done. The next HOA meeting, which I did not attend, apparently turned into a disaster. According to Mary Chen, who emailed me afterward, Patricia showed up and tried to reclaim her position as president, claiming the vote of no confidence was illegal because it was not on the official meeting agenda. Bill Henderson had to call the police to have her removed when she refused to leave the meeting. That incident, combined with multiple complaints from other homeowners about her behavior, led to the HOA board banning her from attending meetings for 6 months. Then things took a darker turn. I started noticing weird things happening around my property. My mailbox was knocked over one night. Someone spray-painted a crude insult on my driveway. My garbage cans were dumped out on the street. I installed security cameras, which turned out to be a very smart decision. The cameras caught Patricia's white Lexus driving slowly past my house multiple times at night. Then, one night around 2 in the morning, the cameras recorded her getting out of her car, walking up to my driveway, and keying a long scratch down the side of my truck. I called Officer Patterson immediately and sent him the video footage. He called me back an hour later. "We are going to pick her up this morning for criminal mischief and vandalism." "This is clear evidence. Do you want to press charges?" "Absolutely," I said. Patricia was arrested that afternoon. According to the police report, she initially denied everything, but when confronted with the video evidence, she broke down and admitted not only to keying my truck, but also to knocking over my mailbox and spray-painting my driveway. She was charged with 3 counts of criminal mischief and 1 count of criminal trespassing. She spent the night in jail before her husband bailed her out the next morning. David helped me file a civil suit against her personally for the property damage, which totaled about $1,800 for repairs to my truck, driveway, and mailbox. Her attorney contacted us 2 weeks later and offered to settle for the full amount plus an additional $2,000 if I would agree not to pursue a restraining order. I took the deal, mostly because I just wanted to be done with the whole thing. Patricia pleaded guilty to the criminal charges as part of a plea deal. She received 1 year of probation, 100 hours of community service, and was ordered to pay restitution and attend anger management counseling. She was also forced to resign from the HOA board completely. The Meadowbrook Hills HOA held a special election, and Bill Henderson was officially elected as the new president. Mary Chen became vice president. One of their first actions was to pass a new rule requiring a professional survey before any HOA construction project on or near private property. They also relocated the compost bin idea to an actual common area near the clubhouse, and it has been pretty successful from what I hear. I even use it occasionally when I have yard waste, though I will admit it is kind of funny every time I do. The whole ordeal took about 4 months from start to finish, and while it was incredibly frustrating and time-consuming, I do not regret fighting back. Property rights matter, and HOAs do not get to just do whatever they want without consequences. I still live in the same house in Meadowbrook Hills. The neighborhood is actually pretty nice now that Patricia is not running things like a tyrant. Bill Henderson is a reasonable guy who actually listens to homeowners, and the HOA has become what it is supposed to be. A group that maintains common areas and enforces reasonable rules, not a power-tripping dictatorship. I occasionally see Patricia around the neighborhood. She always turns and walks the other way, which is fine with me. I heard through the neighborhood gossip chain that she and her husband are thinking about moving, possibly to get away from the embarrassment of everything that happened. As for me, I learned several valuable lessons from this experience. First, always keep documentation of everything, especially property surveys and correspondence. Second, security cameras are worth every penny. Third, do not let people bully you just because they have a title or position of authority. And fourth, sometimes the best way to make a point is to give people exactly what they asked for, just not in the way they expected. The spot where the compost bin used to sit on my property has completely recovered. The grass grew back nicely, and you would never know there was anything built there. I actually planted some native wildflowers in that area, and they have been attracting bees and butterflies all summer. My neighbors, the ones who are not close with Patricia, have been great. Several of them came up to me after everything was resolved and thanked me for standing up to the HOA. Apparently, Patricia had been causing problems for other people too, but most just paid the fines or complied with her demands rather than fight back. One neighbor, Jim, who lives 2 houses down, told me that Patricia had fined him $500 last year because his fence was supposedly 6 inches too tall, according to HOA rules. He paid the fine and cut down his fence, but after seeing me fight back successfully, he actually requested a review of his case. It turned out Patricia had measured his fence wrong, and he got his money back. Another neighbor, Susan, had been threatened with fines because Patricia claimed her rose bushes extended over the property line into common area. After the compost bin incident, Susan had her property surveyed too, and it turned out her bushes were completely on her own land. The HOA formally apologized to her as well. It seems like once Patricia was removed and people started actually checking the facts behind her claims, a lot of her enforcement actions turned out to be wrong or overly aggressive. The new board under Bill Henderson actually spent their first few months reviewing all the fines and violations Patricia had issued in the previous year, and they reversed about 30% of them. The HOA also refunded over $6,000 in improper fines to various homeowners. It was a mess, and it made me feel even better about standing my ground. About 6 months after everything was resolved, I was working in my yard one Saturday when Bill Henderson walked over from across the street. "Hey Marcus, you got a minute?" he asked. "Sure, what is up?" "I wanted to personally thank you again for what you did. I know it was a pain in the ass, and you probably spent money on lawyers and dealing with all of Patricia's craziness, but you really did the whole neighborhood a favor." "I was just defending my property," I said. "But thanks." "No, seriously," Bill insisted. "Patricia had been getting worse and worse for months. She was fining people for ridiculous things, threatening legal action constantly, and basically making everyone miserable. But she had a couple of allies on the board, and nobody wanted to deal with the drama of removing her. When you stood up to her, it gave the rest of us the courage to do the same." "Well, I am glad something good came out of it," I said. "The neighborhood is way better now," Bill continued. "People actually like living here again. We have been getting compliments on how the HOA is running. It is night and day." We chatted for a few more minutes, and then he headed home. It felt good to know that my fight had helped other people, even if that was not my original intention. As for the legal side, Patricia's criminal case concluded about 8 months after the initial incident. She completed her community service and probation without any issues, and her record will eventually be eligible for expungement if she stays out of trouble. Her anger management counselor apparently reported that she had made good progress, which I guess is positive. I never got a personal apology from her, but I did not really expect one. Some people just cannot admit when they are wrong, and Patricia seems to be one of those people. The civil settlement I received from her covered all my costs, and then some. So I actually came out slightly ahead financially despite all the attorney fees throughout the process. David gave me a good deal on his rates because he said the case was straightforward and kind of fun, which I appreciated. I used some of the settlement money to upgrade my security system and add more cameras. I also put some toward a nice new grill for my back patio. Every time I use it, I think about how none of this would have happened if Patricia had just done a simple property survey before starting construction. The compost bin at the clubhouse has become really popular in the neighborhood. They actually had to expand it after the first year because so many people were using it. It is well maintained, properly located on actual HOA property, and it has been a genuinely positive addition to the community. The irony is not lost on me that Patricia's idea was actually good, she just executed it in the worst possible way. I have heard that Patricia and her husband did eventually decide to move. They put their house on the market about a year after everything concluded, and it sold within a month. I do not know where they moved to, and I do not really care. I just hope she learned something from the experience and will not make the same mistakes in her next neighborhood. The new family that bought Patricia's house is really nice. They have 2 young kids who play in the yard, and they have been friendly every time I have seen them. I did not tell them about the compost incident when they moved in. Some stories are better left in the past. My property value actually increased over the time period of all this drama, not because of the drama, but just because the Boulder real estate market has been strong. Several real estate agents have told me that Meadowbrook Hills has a good reputation now, partly because word got around that the HOA is reasonable and well managed. I still work from home, and I still value my privacy and space. The area where the compost bin used to sit has become one of my favorite parts of my yard. The wildflowers I planted have spread naturally, and I added a small bench there where I sometimes sit with my morning coffee. It is peaceful, it is quiet, and it is definitely, absolutely, 100% on my property. Looking back on the whole experience now, almost 2 years later, I can see it more clearly. Was dumping the compost on Patricia's lawn petty? Yes. Was it satisfying? Absolutely. Was it the right move? Legally questionable but strategically effective. The thing is, sometimes you have to make a statement. Sometimes you have to show people that you are serious and that you will not be pushed around. If I had just accepted the violation notice and waited for the HOA to maybe eventually resolve things through proper channels, that compost bin might still be on my property today. Or I might have ended up in a years-long legal battle that cost me tens of thousands of dollars. Instead, I made it clear from day one that I knew my rights and I was willing to defend them. I documented everything, I got proper legal counsel, and when they pushed, I pushed back harder. Not with violence or real destruction, but with a creative solution that made my point crystal clear. The compost ended up on Patricia's lawn, she ended up facing consequences for her actions, and the HOA ended up with better leadership. In the end, everyone except Patricia came out ahead. I think the biggest lesson I learned is that HOAs are only as good or as bad as the people running them. The rules themselves were not the problem. The Meadowbrook Hills HOA bylaws are actually pretty reasonable. The problem was Patricia, who used her position to bully people and push her own agenda without regard for property rights or basic decency. Now that we have good leadership, the HOA functions the way it should. Common areas are maintained, disputes are handled fairly, and homeowners are treated with respect. It is not exciting or dramatic, which is exactly how an HOA should be. I have also learned that standing up for yourself often inspires others to do the same. After I fought back against Patricia, multiple neighbors found the courage to challenge improper fines and unreasonable demands. It created a ripple effect that improved things for everyone. And I learned that sometimes the simplest solution is the most effective. I could have just filed a lawsuit and waited months or years for a resolution. Instead, I returned the compost to the person responsible for putting it on my property in the first place. It was direct, it made my point, and it got results within weeks instead of years. My friends still laugh about the story whenever it comes up. One of them made me a custom sign that says, "No composting without permission," and I have it hanging in my garage as a joke. My family thinks the whole thing was ridiculous, but also kind of hilarious. My mom said I should write a book about it, but I think this is probably enough. One compost bin fight per lifetime is plenty for me. These days, my biggest HOA concern is making sure I submit my annual landscaping approval form on time and keeping my trash cans out of sight on non-collection days. Boring, normal HOA stuff. And I could not be happier about that. The neighborhood kids have started a rumor that I am some kind of local hero who defeated an evil villain, which is adorable and also completely overblown. But I will take it. It is better than being known as that guy who dumped garbage on someone's lawn, which is probably how Patricia describes me if anyone asks her about the incident. I have thought about reaching out to Patricia to try to make peace, but David advised against it. "Leave it alone," he said. "She is gone, you won, everyone has moved on. Opening that door again just risks more drama." He is probably right. So I just go about my life, working from home, maintaining my property, and occasionally using the community compost bin when I have yard waste. I wave to my neighbors, I attend HOA meetings when there is something important being discussed, and I live peacefully in my house with my half-acre of property. All of which is definitely, legally, and permanently mine. The final funny twist to the story happened a few months ago. The HOA decided to give out annual awards for the first time, things like Best Landscaping and Most Improved Property. Bill Henderson called me and asked if I would be okay with them giving me a Community Champion Award for standing up for homeowner rights. I almost said no because I did not want to make a big thing out of it. But then I thought about how it might encourage other people in other neighborhoods to stand up for themselves too. So I said yes. They presented the award at the annual HOA meeting, and it was actually really nice. People applauded, and several came up to me afterward to share their own HOA horror stories from other places they had lived. It felt good to be recognized for doing the right thing, even though I was really just defending my own property. The award itself is a small plaque that reads Meadowbrook Hills Community Champion for outstanding dedication to homeowner rights. It is hanging in my home office right next to my college diploma and a photo of me summiting Mount Evans a few years ago. Every time I look at it, I remember that sometimes the things we do for ourselves end up helping a lot of other people too. I did not set out to reform the HOA or remove a bad president. I just wanted that compost bin off my property. But by standing firm and refusing to be bullied, I ended up making the whole neighborhood a better place to live. And really, that is what property ownership should be about. Not fighting with your neighbors or your HOA, but having a place that is yours, that you can enjoy, that you can control within reasonable limits. A place where you can plant wildflowers if you want, or put up a fence, or just sit quietly with your morning coffee without worrying that someone is going to build something on your land without asking. I have been asked a few times if I would ever serve on the HOA board, and my answer is always no. I respect what Bill and Mary and the others are doing, but I have no interest in getting that involved. I like being a regular homeowner who shows up to meetings occasionally and otherwise just takes care of his own property. That is enough for me. The funny thing is, I have actually become kind of friendly with Bill Henderson over the past couple years. We sometimes grab a beer at the local brewery and talk about neighborhood stuff or just life in general. He is a good guy, and he has done a great job managing the HOA. He has told me multiple times that he is grateful for what happened, because it gave him the opportunity to step up into leadership. Sometimes the worst situations create the best opportunities, he said once. If Patricia had not screwed up so badly with your property, I probably never would have gotten involved. And now I actually enjoy it, most of the time anyway. We laughed about that, because he was dealing with a complaint about someone's wind chimes being too loud, which was the kind of petty problem that has no good solution. But it was a petty problem, not a constitutional crisis like Patricia used to create. Progress. As I finish reflecting on this whole experience, I am sitting on that bench in the spot where the compost bin used to be. The wildflowers are in full bloom, the bees are buzzing, and everything is peaceful. My property is mine, the HOA is functioning well, and Patricia is someone else's problem now. I did not set out to be a community champion or an HOA reform advocate. I just wanted to defend what was mine. But sometimes that is enough. Sometimes standing up for yourself is exactly what the situation needs. And sometimes delivering a truckload of compost to someone's front lawn is the wake-up call they need to realize they have gone too far. Would I do it again if I found myself in a similar situation? Probably not exactly the same way. I might handle things a bit more diplomatically now that I have been through the experience. But I do not regret what I did. It worked, it sent the right message, and it ultimately led to positive changes for everyone involved. Well, everyone except Patricia, but she brought that on herself. And that, in the end, is the real lesson. Actions have consequences. If you build on someone else's property without permission, you might find your own property receiving an unwanted delivery. If you abuse your authority, people will eventually remove you from that position. If you harass and vandalize your neighbors, you will face criminal charges. It all makes perfect logical sense when you think about it. Patricia just never thought she would face consequences because she had been getting away with her behavior for so long. But everyone's luck runs out eventually, and hers ran out when she decided to build a compost bin on my land. My land. Those two words are important. They represent more than just legal property ownership. They represent autonomy, rights, boundaries, and respect. When someone violates your land without permission, they are not just trespassing physically. They are showing disrespect for your rights as a property owner and as a person. I was not going to accept that disrespect, and I am glad I did not. The fight was worth it. The drama was worth it. Even the stress and the attorney fees and the midnight vandalism were worth it because in the end, I maintained my rights and improved my community in the process. So if you are reading this and you are dealing with a similar situation, whether it is an HOA overstepping their bounds or a neighbor ignoring property lines or any other property rights issue, my advice is simple. Document everything. Get proper legal counsel, know your rights, and do not back down. You do not have to dump compost on anyone's lawn. There are probably more mature ways to handle most situations. But whatever you do, make sure you stand firm and defend what is yours. Because if you do not, who will? Property rights are fundamental to ownership and freedom. They are not just abstract legal concepts. They are real, they matter, and they are worth fighting for. My little half-acre in Boulder, Colorado is not much in the grand scheme of things, but it is mine, and that means something. And that compost bin. It is happily sitting in its proper location on actual HOA property near the clubhouse, serving the neighborhood exactly as intended, just not on my land. Never on my land again.